always with you what cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
There are 1 billion nerds on this planet, and within them, a billion unique fandoms. But there is one thing that we all agree on. The Empire Strikes Back is really good. This movie has everything. Robot dogs, a tricksy Muppet, a dash of incest, edgelords, pansexuals.
Everything you've heard about me is true.
And of course, the father of all twists, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's daddy. But Vader's big Maury Povich revelation was not the only time our expectations were subverted. There was another twist. When Luke is on death's door on the ice planet Hoth, the force projection of Obi-Wan Kenobi's ghost tells him to travel to Dagobah to learn from his teacher, Master Yoda. In Luke's last moments of consciousness, this is the only information he is given. Go to this planet, find my teacher. Luke passes out, takes a quick nap inside the eviscerated abdomen of a tauntaun, makes out with his sister, penetrates a robot dog, and then flies his spaceship to Dagobah. Upon arrival, he immediately meets Yoda. It's a small world.
I am wondering, why are you here?
And dismisses him completely.
Help you I can. Yes.
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
He certainly doesn't suspect that this quirky little troll is the last living Jedi Master, a being of immense power. We, as the audience, aren't supposed to know Yoda's identity either. Like Luke, we are expecting a great warrior. And he's a Muppet. So why are we talking about a sci-fi puppet in a philosophy video? Well, because I'm a... But also because all of Yoda's spiritual lessons for Luke are inspired by my favorite philosopher, a Daoist sage named Zhuangzi.
Daoism is a philosophy/religion founded in China 2,500 years ago. It has religious qualities, but it isn't concerned with ancient gods or the afterlife. Daoism is most interested in the present, being here now. It is a philosophy of how to follow the Tao, which translates to the path or the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Daoism teaches that the path to a good life is traveled by letting go. Letting go of preconceptions, letting go of old beliefs, letting go of expectation, and letting go of the self. Ultimately, it is a philosophy of going with the flow.
There are 2 primary Daoist texts, sort of like an Old and a New Testament. The first book you've probably heard of, the Tao Te Ching, which was written by Lao Tzu. The second text is the eponymous Zhuangzi.
Zhuangzi is my favorite philosopher, and his book, the Zhuangzi, is far and away my favorite philosophical text. The language is beautiful, the stories are mystical and esoteric, but it's also satirical. He constantly dunks on other Chinese philosophers. Like, he writes Confucius as a character in his text. Confucius was the most influential philosopher during his time, and Zhuangzi writes him extolling Taoist ideals that completely contradict Confucianism.
It's like writing a book about wizards, but one of your characters is a trans rights activist named J.K. Rowling. It's the perfect amount of clever and shitposting.
But what I really love about this book is that it is unlike any other philosophical text. Zhuangzi refuses to tell us what he's trying to teach. Let me repeat that. Zhuangzi refuses to tell us what he's trying to teach. So how can we learn if the master won't tell us the lesson? Zhuangzi teaches by showing, not telling. He believes that all knowledge is experiential. That is, you can't learn something from just reading a book. You have to experience it. In other words, Zhuangzi will only show you the door, You're the one that has to walk through it.
The purpose of this video is to introduce you to Daoism through the teachings of Yoda. He is a perfect stand-in for Zhuangzi, and his dialogue with Luke is a surprisingly accurate summary of the central tenets of Daoism. So let's talk philosophy. Both Zhuangzi and Yoda begin their teachings with deception. Consider Luke's experience on Dagobah. Yoda hides his identity.
You seek Yoda.
You know him?
Take it to him, I will.
Why? The only way to reach students is to meet them where they are. True education isn't memorizing facts or arguments from a teacher. We learn through experience. If you want to learn how to twerk, you can watch every instructional YouTube video ever made, but you won't know how to actually do it until you stand in front of the mirror and shake your booty. What's that? No? We're not doing that bit. Yoda deceives Luke because it is the quickest, most compelling method to show him his first lesson. Luke is reckless.
You are reckless.
He has no patience.
Boy has no patience.
And Yoda knows that reckless, impatient Jedi, well, it's just not a good vibe. Now, of course, Yoda is legit trolling Luke.
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say.
And it's great, but the point of this deception is to teach the first lesson.
Look, I'm sure it's delicious. I just don't understand why we can't see Yoda now.
Patience! For the Jedi, it is time to eat as well.
And instead of telling Luke, Yoda shows him how impatient and reckless he really is.
I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're wasting our time.
He needs to slow down, be patient.
All his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was, what he was doing.
If Luke is going to train to be a Jedi, he needs to be here, now.
Zhuangzi also begins his lessons with deception. When I taught this in the classroom, I had students read the first chapter without knowing anything about Zhuangzi at all, and I asked them to interpret the moral of the opening story. Let's do something similar. As we read this fantastical story, ask yourself, what does it mean? What lesson is Zhuangzi trying to teach? Ladies, gentlemen, and those who lieth betwixt, I present to you the opening page of my favorite philosophical text, the Zhuangzi.
In the northern darkness, there is a fish named Minnow. He is 1,000 miles long. He transforms into a bird named Breeze. She is 1,000 miles across. She ruffles and flies, and her wings are like clouds hanging from heaven. As the oceans flow, she thinks to migrate to the southern darkness. The southern darkness is heaven's pool. Okay, so there's an enormous fish that becomes a bird and is also transsexual. I think this transformation represents the impermanence of life, our constant growth, and maybe that trans lives matter? The Tales of Chi records wonders. It says, in her migration to the southern darkness, Breeze flaps along the water for 1,000 miles, spirals up on a whirlwind to 30,000 miles, and flies 6 months at a stretch. I guess the story of Breeze, the minnow bird, is from the ancient text The Tales of Chi, wherein she flies all around the world. But I'm not quite sure why— Horse-shaped clouds, motes of dust, living things blowing breath at each other. Is the blue-green of heaven its proper color, or is it just endlessly far away? It looks just the same to Breeze, gazing down from above. Maybe Breeze flies really high and sees lots of crazy clouds. From 30,000 miles, she can take a macro view of the world, where everything looks the same? If water isn't deep, it cannot support big boats. If wind isn't deep, it cannot support big wings. This is why Breeze rises 30,000 miles with the wind beneath her. Only then can she rest on the wind, carrying the heavens upon her back, and nothing can stop her. Only then does she set her sights to the south.
So this is a pretty weird way to open your philosophical text, right? Like, what the fuck is he even talking about? This is an acid trip of a story about a gigantic fish who transforms into a bird with a wingspan measured in miles, who carries the heavens on her back.
Chang eats the sun and drinks the skies.
It's okay if you're confused. The story goes out of its way to defy understanding. Discussing this with my philosophy classes was always one of the highlights of the semester. All my students had wildly different interpretations. They thought the moral was personal growth, evolution, making difficult choices, or the duality of nature.
The cicada and the dove laugh at Breeze, saying,
"When we start up and fly, we struggle for the elm or the sandalwood. Sometimes we don't even make it, but just plunk to the ground. What is she even doing rising 30,000 miles and heading south?"
But these are two little bugs. What do they know?
Every student had a different interpretation of Minnow and Breeze. And this is exactly Zhuangzi's point. When you read this story, your unique interpretation is informed by your personal intellectual baggage. More on this baggage in a moment. First, why does Zhuangzi open his book this way? There's a clue. He says the story of Breeze comes from
The Tales of Qi.
Okay, but there's no historical record of a book named The Tales of Qi. Scholars believe he just made it up. Which means Zhuangzi opens his seminal Daoist text, the New Testament of Daoism, with a story from a book that doesn't exist. What? Technically, this is his first critique of Confucius, who believed that ancient texts from a prior golden age could teach us everything we need to know.
Confucius said, "The 300 poems in the Odes can be judged with a single phrase. Oh, they will not lead you astray."
The Odes, which were a real text, were meant to be a guide on politics, the Tao,
This is the way.
how to live a good life. And Zhuangzi vehemently disagrees that knowledge comes from reading ancient texts.
So does Yoda, actually. In The Last Jedi, objectively the second best Star Wars, don't at me, Yoda's last lesson for Luke is pure Zhuangzi.
Time it is for you to look past a pile of old books. The sacred Jedi texts. Ooh, read them, have you? Well, page turners, they were not. Yes. Wisdom they held, but that library contained nothing that the girl Rey does not already possess.
Zhuangzi doesn't tell us you can't learn from a text. His opening story shows us this first lesson. He makes up an absurd tale about a gigantic flying fish bird, sits back and chuckles as we bend over backwards to make sense of it, to interpret. And in doing so, we play right into Zhuangzi's trickery. This is why I love this text so much. Our interpretations of Minnow and Breeze are not about the literal words on the page. The story is an empty vessel, still water upon which we see our own reflection, what we carry with us.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you.
Luke Skywalker's training with Yoda begins with a deception, because that deception teaches Luke the foundational lesson upon which the entirety of his training must be built. If he's going to become a Jedi, Luke needs to let go of his impatience, his recklessness, his desire for
Adventure. Excitement. A Jedi craves not these things.
Zhuangzi's opening deception is also the foundation for his lessons. If we're going to engage with Daoism, we need to let go of our preconceptions. Our interpretation of Minnow and Breeze is not about the fish bird. Just as Zhuangzi invented this story, we invent what we want to hear. We all carry our own baggage. We all see the world through our own lens. There's a term for this lens, Umwelt, and it is essential to understanding Zhuangzi.
Umwelt means the world as it is experienced by a particular organism. For example, Sophie and I live in the same house, but we experience this house in very different ways. As a human, I primarily perceive my home through my eyes. I see the color of the walls, the tapestries, the soft bisexual mood lighting, but Sophie primarily perceives the house with her nose. The smells of her pack of humans, her treats, the laundry detergent in our clothing.
The term Umwelt comes from ecology. In any given ecosystem, there are dozens, hundreds of different species, all with a different set of sensory perceptions. Snakes see the world in infrared. Dolphins hear their world through echolocation. Different organisms live in the same physical location, yet inhabit their own distinct worlds, their own distinct Umwelt.
This term has a philosophical component too. You've probably heard the phrase, if you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. That is to say, if you have the Umwelt of a hammer, you're going to perceive every obstacle as one to be smashed. I see the world differently than you, differently than the partners I love, differently than everyone. Same for you. The sum of your unique past creates your present reality.
This is why all my students had different interpretations of minnow and breeze. This is why some people are conservatives and others are progressive. We are all products of the sum of our experience.
Okay, so back to Dagobah. A few scenes later, Yoda is training Luke how to do Jedi things, and his T-65B X-Wing class starfighter sinks into the swamp. Luke handles the unexpected setback with maturity and confidence.
No. We'll never get it out now.
And Yoda's response is pure, unfiltered Daoism.
Always with you what cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
As for moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yoda tells Luke that the difference he perceives between a rock and a starship exists only in his mind. For a Jedi, there is no difference. If Luke can telekinetically lift a rock, he can lift a spaceship.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
In order to have a deeper understanding of the Force, to take his next steps forward, Luke must let go of his beliefs and knowledge from the past.
Zhuangzi talks about restrictive knowledge over and over in his text. He tells the story of little mushrooms who grow in the morning, perish in the evening, and thus can never know the waxing and waning of the moon. There's the story of a frog living in a well who can't fathom the enormity of a lake, let alone an ocean. A well frog is completely convinced that its hole in the ground represents the whole of reality.
Every biological thing that perceives the world has a scope of knowledge, a limit to its understanding. Sophie knows a couple dozen commands and tricks. She's a very good girl, but I could never teach her how to make a YouTube video. That's outside her scope.
So when Zhuangzi talks about the cognitive limitations of mushrooms, insects, and well frogs, he's not giving us an ecology lesson, he's talking about us. Like everything else, we have a limited scope, and it is the knowledge that we cling to that restricts us, that forms the boundary of what we can understand. The philosophy behind Yoda's line that Luke must
unlearn what you have learned
is lifted straight from the Zhuangzi.
To stop leaving tracks is easy. Not to walk upon the ground is hard. It's easy to fake what people do. Faking what heaven does is hard. You've heard of using wings to fly, but not of using no wings to fly. You've heard of using knowledge to know, but not of using no knowledge to know. Look up at the hole in the wall that fills the empty room with light. I really, really love the imagery of this passage. The Zhuangzi is filled with contradictions, encouraging deeper reflection. You've heard of using knowledge to know, but not of using no knowledge to know. What does this mean? How can somebody use no knowledge to know something? Look up at the hole in the wall that fills the empty room with light. Imagine a closed room with no windows or doors. The room is sealed off from the outside and pitch black inside. All it takes is one hole in the wall, one window, and the entire space can be illuminated.
Zhuangzi is talking about our minds. We create these barriers of what we know, our Umwelt, and our adherence to this knowledge keeps us in the dark. It makes growth and evolution impossible. I think humanity's greatest limitation is how easily we are trapped by what we know. Trapped by our Umwelt. Yoda and Zhuangzi both teach that we must be open to the possibility that our beliefs are wrong.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Every time we are convinced by our knowledge, convinced that we are in the right, we are acting as foolishly as the well frog, mistaking our subjective Umwelt for objective reality. Instead, we should be willing to let go of the knowledge and beliefs that imprison us.
And then we get to Yoda's most famous line.
Unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
This is kind of a weird motivational speech from Yoda, right? Like, it sounds cool, but what does it mean? This is actually the line that connected Yoda to Daoism for me, because not trying is the central pillar of Daoist philosophy. It even has a specific name, Wu-wei.
Wu-wei literally means non-action, but non-striving is a more accurate interpretation. In chapter 8 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes, "The supreme good is like water, which nourishes all things without trying. Water is life. It acts, but it doesn't strive. Water carved the Grand Canyon, moving millions of tons of earth and rock, all without trying. Water just flows." My favorite Wu-wei parable in the Zhuangzi is about a man who carves bell stands.
When I am going to make a bell stand, I never let it wear out my energy. I always fast in order to still my mind. When I have fasted for 5 days, I no longer have any thoughts of praise or blame, of skill or clumsiness. And when I have fasted for 7 days, I am so still that I forget I have 4 limbs, a form or body. By that time, the ruler and his court no longer exists for me. My skill is concentrated, and all outside distractions fade away.
So in this story, Zhuangzi is describing a sagely bell stand maker with a very specific technique. He fasts for 7 days in order to let go of his ego and ultimately his very conception of the self. He lets go of his need to do a good job, to impress, and moves into a state of flow.
In this state, I go into the mountain forest and examine the heavenly nature of the trees. If I find one of superlative form, and I can see a bell stand within it, I put my hand to the job of carving. If not, I let it go. This way, I am simply matching up heaven with heaven.
In his state of flow, the craftsman, tripping balls after starving himself for a full week, wanders the forest searching for the perfect tree. Not a tree he's going to strive to carve into a bell stand, but the tree that has a bell stand hiding within it. If he can't find that tree, he won't do any carving. And the last line really brings home the concept of Wu-wei.
This way, I am simply matching up heaven with heaven.
He's not striving to turn a tree into a bell stand. In his deep state of Zen, he is able to find the tree that is supposed to be a bell stand. The tree that is waiting to transform into the bell stand it is destined to become. He is only able to do this once he lets go of expectation, ego, and the self. By letting go of these things, he is able to achieve the enviable state of Wei Wu-wei, acting through non-action. He's not trying to make anything new. He's not trying at all. He simply does his task, or he does not.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Which brings us to the final lesson, letting go of the self. Feeling good, feeling caffeinated, let's do the last chapter and go. Despite being showered with brilliant philosophy, Luke tries to lift the X-Wing and he fails.
I can't. It's too big.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is.
Yoda tells Luke,
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
we're not our physical flesh, we're something more. We're beings of light. He says that the Force
Surrounds us and binds us.
and he's talking about the Tao.
Feel the Force around you, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere.
Yoda is saying two things. The first breaks down the self, to deny that our selves are this crude physical matter. The second expands the self. The Jedi is connected to all things. This breaking down of the self and expansion of the self is again lifted straight from Zhuangzi.
Here's a passage about breaking down the self.
In our actions, we take the self on faith, but we can't see its form. There is essence, but no form. The 100 bones, the 9 orifices, the 6 organs all exist together. But which do you think is closest to the self?
We assume the self is real, but we can't really describe what the self is. It's not your body, right? If you lose both your legs in an accident, are you suddenly half of yourself? Of course not. When we find a way to digitize consciousness and your mind lives on in some ethereal form after your physical body dies, would you still be yourself? Maybe. Probably? Perhaps the self exists in the collection of memories. But if your friend had a tragic accident and lost all their memories, are they no longer your friend? These are tough questions.
So what is the self? I think Zhuangzi says it best.
There is essence, but no form.
There's an essence to you, your personhood, but there's no form. No physical part of you is the self.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
If the first step is letting go of the concept of a physical self, the second step is to realize that all things are connected.
Confucius says, looked at from their differences, your liver and gallbladder are as far apart as the earth and the moon. Looked at from their sameness, the 10,000 things are one.
Zhuangzi is saying we can choose to see things as different. By focusing on the differences between things, even the organs within your body are completely unique.
But that's a viewpoint we choose to adopt. Instead of searching for differences, we can choose to view things as the same. You and I have different genetics, different life experiences, different heights, skill sets, and kinks. There are real differences between us, but our DNA is 99.9% identical. We're both made of hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, and the elements that constitute your body and my body were born from the same exploding star billions of years ago. Every atom on this planet is cut from the same cloth. You, me, every living thing on this planet share these qualities. We are merely sentient stardust, interacting with fellow sentient stardust. Each of us experiences our own Umwelt, our own subjective reality, but we are all one. So if the self cannot be reliably defined, and if this elusive self is interconnected with all things, then, according to Yoda and Zhuangzi, it doesn't make any sense to cling to the self.
I could talk all night about this last lesson, but this video is already too long. I'm really trying to keep them under 30 minutes. The Daoist conception of the self is the most foreign, esoteric lesson for Westerners to learn. So this is really just an introduction. I have another video on Daoism coming up where we'll dig a little deeper. Yoda introduced 20,000 younglings to the ways of the Force during his 800-year tenure as the Grand Master of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. And he introduced millions of Westerners to 4 key Daoist lessons: letting go of preconceptions, letting go of the knowledge that binds us, letting go of the need to strive or force things, and ultimately letting go of the self, or at least the ego.
That's amazing. That's all. That's it.
Ultimately, it is a philosophy of going with the flow. Didn't die.